You're traveling through the unknown, a journey beyond the corners of reality, where the shadows whisper and the chill runs deep. Welcome to the dimension where your deepest fears are given form. This is The Midnight Mystery.
Welcome to The Midnight Mystery. This episode is called The Screams Down the Hall, A Teacher's Worst Nightmare. In each episode, we delve into the shadowed corners of our existence, bringing you tales of the eerie, the uncanny, and the downright terrifying. From the realms of the supernatural to the depths of the human psyche, no stone is left unturned, no dark secret left hidden. As the clock once again draws near midnight, prepare to embark on another adventure into the uncanny, the eerie, the horrifying, the midnight mystery. It was a day like any other in the small suburban high school where I taught 10th grade English. My classroom was filled with the usual chatter and laughter of teenagers, eager to finish the day. I had always prided myself on being a well-liked teacher, someone who could engage with the students while maintaining a comfortable learning environment. The day's lesson was about Shakespeare, and I was in the middle of explaining the nuances of Romeo and Juliet when it happened. A sudden scream echoed from the hallway, followed by a loud bang. My heart skipped a beat. The room fell into a horrified silence, everyone's eyes meeting mine as if searching for answers I didn't have. More screams and bangs followed, jolting us out of our momentary paralysis. "Everyone, listen to me," I said, my voice tinged with an urgency I'd never felt before. "I think there's a shooting happening. Lock the door, turn off the lights, and hide under your desks. Now." The students sprang into action, fear driving their movements. Emily, who sat closest to the door, leapt up to lock it while others hit the switch for the lights. The room plunged into darkness, save for the pale afternoon light leaking through the cracks in the blinds. One by one, students slid under their desks, tooking their legs and making themselves as small as possible. I found myself crouching under my own desk, my heart pounding in my chest. Every sound was amplified. A distant shout, footsteps rushing past our classroom, and then something else. A screeching noise that didn't belong. It was neither human nor mechanical. It scraped down the hallway like nails on a chalkboard, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. As the noise approached, my thoughts raced. What the hell was going on? This wasn't just a school shooting. That sound, that awful noise, wasn't something a gun could make. My mind scrambled for answers, rational explanations, but came up empty. I was supposed to be the adult, the protector, but for the first time in my career, I felt utterly helpless. The students remained silent under their desks, each lost in their own world of terror. I could hear their shaky breaths, their whispered prayers. We were all united in our vulnerability, waiting for a nightmare we couldn't comprehend. As I knelt under my desk, the terrible screeching noise grew closer, reverberating down the hall like some twisted lullaby. It was alien, not like anything I'd heard before. I could sense my students' apprehension deepen, the atmosphere thickening with an inexplicable dread. This isn't just a school shooting, I thought, my internal monologue desperate for an explanation. What kind of firearm or explosive could make a sound like that? Could it be a prank or some sort of elaborate hoax? No, that couldn't be it. The terror in those screams was authentic. There was something else going on here, something deeply wrong. We all held our breath as the sound stopped right outside our door. My heart sank when I heard the unmistakable creaking of the door handle turning. But it was locked, I thought frantically. The door edged open slowly, its hinges groaning softly. A chill ran down my spine. I realized I didn't hear any footsteps entering, just an ominous silence that seemed to fill the room. Unable to contain my curiosity and fear, I lifted my head slightly to peek out from under my desk. What I saw defied all logic and understanding. A demonic figure hovered just inside the doorway, its neck twisted in an impossible angle. But it wasn't just the grotesque form that horrified me. It was the face. It was recognizable, triggering a distant memory that I couldn't immediately place. The figure floated further into the room, its hollow eyes scanning over the hiding places of my students. A wave of realization washed over me. This was not just some random monstrosity. This creature had a purpose. Was it looking for someone? Was it aware of me? Its twisted neck seemed to creak as its head rotated, taking in its surroundings. It emitted a low growl, almost as if frustrated or annoyed. The room was thick with tension, a collective sense of dread hanging over us like a dark cloud. I locked eyes with the creature, its gaze piercing through me. I felt an intense pressure in my head, like it was probing my thoughts, sifting through my fears. I wanted to look away, to shrink back into the darkness, but I was paralyzed, captive to its malevolent scrutiny. Time stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, the creature broke its gaze, turning its attention back to the room. It hovered there, as if contemplating its next move, leaving us in agonizing suspense. My mind raced with questions, theories, and worst-case scenarios. What did it want? Where did it come from? But most of all, what was it going to do next? Just then, one of the students, Tim, a quiet kid who sat at the back, muttered something barely audible, a whisper that cut through the silence like a knife. Sarah. The word Sarah seemed to hang in the air, vibrating with a frequency that sent shivers down my spine. My eyes darted to Tim. He was pale, his eyes brimming with tears. Slowly, the recognition spread like wildfire among the students. Sarah had been one of them, a part of this very class until she disappeared a few weeks ago, under mysterious circumstances. The connection was too surreal to be a coincidence. Suddenly, multiple voices erupted in cries and sobs. "Sarah, we're so sorry. Please forgive us." They sounded like desperate pleas in a courtroom, and in a way, maybe they were. "Sarah, we didn't mean for any of this to happen," Tim stammered through his tears. "It was a stupid dare, pushing you off the bridge. We didn't know there was a log in the water. We didn't know—" A heavy silence fell upon the room. The creature, Sarah, or whatever remained of her, hovered closer to Tim. Her eyes glowed brighter, reflecting a malice that seemed beyond human comprehension. And then it happened. A flicker of fire emanated from her being, illuminating the room in an eerie, otherworldly light. My thoughts were racing. Could it be? Was this Sarah's form of vengeance? It was unfathomable, this tragic turn of events spun from a dare gone horribly wrong. But here we were, captive to the consequences of actions that were never meant to be malicious, yet had led to this dark juncture in time. As Sarah hovered closer to Tim, I realized that his pleas, our pleas, were falling on deaf ears, if she even had ears anymore. The flickering fire that radiated from her seemed to expand, forming a wall of flames that separated her from Tim. She was no longer the Sarah they knew. That much was painfully obvious. She had become something else, something driven by a rage and torment that I couldn't begin to understand. The fire surged, encircling Tim in a vortex of flames. He screamed, a sound so chilling it was as if his soul was being ripped from his body. My instincts screamed at me to intervene, to do something, anything to stop this, but I was powerless, a mere spectator to a revenge that defied all reason. As quickly as it had flared up, the fire receded, extinguishing itself as though sapped of its energy. Sarah hovered back, away from Tim, whose body now lay motionless on the floor. The room was filled with the acrid smell of burnt flesh and hair. Sarah then turned her gaze toward the rest of the class, her eyes glowing an even fiercer shade of red. In that moment, I knew that her quest for vengeance was far from over. I braced myself, not for what I could do, but for what I was powerless to prevent. Sarah's eyes, blazing with an intensity that seemed to originate from some hellish abyss, held the room captive. And then, with an almost contemptuous flicker, she unleashed a torrent of flames that erupted in every direction. The classroom became an inferno. Students screamed, their voices mixing with the roar of the fire and the guttural growls emanating from Sarah. It was a cacophony of horror, a symphony of suffering, all stemming from an unfathomable cruelty born of what? A dare? A momentary lapse in judgment? Whatever it was, the price was now unimaginably high. My instincts kicked into overdrive. "Survive!" A primal part of me roared. Using my arms to shield my face, I crawled toward the emergency exit at the back of the room. The heat was unbearable, scalding the air, making every breath a gulp of fire. I felt my skin blister and pop, but the pain seemed distant, as if I were observing it rather than experiencing it. My hand reached the cold metal of the door handle. With a strength I didn't know I had, I pushed it down and tumbled out into the hallway, gasping for air that wasn't thick with ash and agony. I looked back just in time to see the classroom swallowed whole by the flames, a churning maelstrom that consumed everything and everyone in it. The door slammed shut behind me, as if pushed by an invisible hand. The next few minutes were a blur. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. Firefighters burst into the building, their faces masks of professional focus that broke for just a moment when they found me, burned but alive. I was loaded onto a stretcher and carried out of the building, the sky above a swirling mass of smoke and confusion. Sarah, or whatever that creature had become, was nowhere to be found. The firefighters would later say that they'd never seen a fire behave like that, as if guided by some malevolent force. The police, for their part, had a million questions, none of which I could answer. As for me, I left my teaching job. How could I stand before a classroom ever again, knowing the devastation that youthful recklessness could wrought? The tragedy became a scar on the community's psyche, a wound that would never fully heal. Parents held their children a little tighter. Teachers looked at their students and wondered what secrets they harbored, and everyone asked the same question: what actually happened in that classroom? I carry the weight of that day with me, a haunting blend of survivor's guilt and agonizing uncertainty. The smell of fire still lingers in my nostrils. The sound of my students' screams echoes in my ears. My burns have healed, but the emotional scars are as fresh as ever. Sarah's face, twisted, broken, yet strangely familiar, visits me in my nightmares. The school eventually reopened, its charred walls repaired, and its burnt classrooms rebuilt. But nothing could erase the events that transpired, nor could any amount of paint cover the dark stain it left on all our souls. Teachers came and went, students graduated, but the memory remained, passed down like a dark urban legend. And so, life moved on, but it did so with a wary glance over its shoulder, as if expecting the shadows to burst into flame. I moved far away, leaving behind a career, a community, and a part of myself. The questions remain unanswered, a puzzle with missing pieces, a story with no satisfying conclusion. And that, perhaps, is the most terrifying thing of all. I hope you enjoyed our episode. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to you, our brave listeners. Your presence in this shared journey into the unknown is what fuels our stories. Your fascination is our motivation. Did this episode send chills down your spine? Then leave your comments, your thoughts and theories, your own midnight mysteries. Your feedback is the beacon that guides us through the uncharted territories of our stories. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to our channel. By joining the Midnight Mystery family, you won't miss out on a single chilling tale. As a subscriber, you'll be the first to know when a new episode lurks around the corner, ready to pull you back into the shadowy depths of the unknown. This is the Midnight Mystery signing off, leaving you with a simple reminder. When the clock strikes 12, fear the silence, for that's when our tales come to life. Good night, Midnight listeners. And remember, not all who wander into the dark are lost.